Okay, today we're going to talk about production. First of all, the economists have broken down the structure of an economy into three sectors. In this way, we are better able to analyse each sector according to certain characteristics. For example, you've got the primary sector, which is primary industries, which are about raw materials, getting raw materials and using more raw materials. So you've got, for example, crop or animal production, so farming, forestry, logging, mining for metals, etc., oil and gas extraction. And this part of the economy, the third world, normally traditionally has focused on because it hasn't got the competencies to have the secondary sector industries, which are about manufacturing, about turning these raw materials extracted by the primary sector into finished products, into goods. For example, food processing. When we look at Nutella, it's processed, it's put together. Paper, chemicals, oil and gas refining, so turning the oil and gas we've extracted into something usable for cars, etc. Pharmaceuticals, very difficult to manufacture. Rubber and plastic products, computers, producing computers, the physical reproduction process, construction, and these types of industries. Then we've got the tertiary sector or service industries, where we can see, so in the secondary sector, we can see industrialized countries able to do these types of operations, Russia, places like that, Brazil. And then you've got the tertiary sector, which is about the service industry. Normally, you've got the first world, developed economies. We call them developed economies, which have a very big service sector, incredibly big. The UK has an enormous service sector. I think something like 80% of the economy is services. Here we're talking about wholesaling and retailing. This means, the distribution. Amazon, for example, the biggest company in the world now, is all service sector. It's just a service industry. Repairs, transportation, storage, accommodation, publishing, education, very, very important, very big. Public administration, healthcare, again, enormous part of our economy. Legal services, art and entertainment. So the service industry is very important and getting more and more important. So those are the three sectors of an economy. Now, productivity. What is productivity? Productivity is basically how much you can produce given the resources. And we're always trying to increase our productivity. We're always trying to produce more with our resources. We've got to remember the resources are limited and we want as much as possible. So it's a measure. Productivity measures how efficiently these resources are being used in production, how much we can produce from them. We can imagine the old car industry. Obviously, we didn't have the productivity today. We weren't able, given the resources, given the people and all the resources to put a car together, we weren't able to produce the quantity with the machines and the equipment we've got today. So productivity is fundamental to the economy, because for the growth of the economy, we need to grow productivity. In this topic, we will talk a little bit about unemployment. It does touch on unemployment, because obviously with the productivity, the increase in productivity using machines, you lose the workers, the human resources. But is this, we can think about, is this desirable, and what, look at this process, is it where we should be going, etc. For the economist, there are two ways of increasing productivity. Or you can produce more output with the given resources, using the same resources, or have the same output but use less resources. So we can use, for example, less people and produce the same output with machines, or produce more using machines given the same resources, that is the people. So this is two different ways. Making the resources more productive could be done in those two ways. Now, if we look in the past at productivity, we've had people, for example, on farms doing the work, bending over, planting crops, or maybe harvesting crops using horses, etc. Not very productive, not really adding much value. They're not able to create much value given the raw materials. Okay, that's important. By not being productive, it means we can't take much value. They can't take many wages and much profit from the final product, because they're adding the value in the final product in terms of wages and profit. And with this, we find we have to work very hard, very long days, no weekends, no holidays, no long pension. You can't spend 25 years at schools and universities, etc. Life was much harder. So if we look at this situation, the modern farming, we can see an increase in productivity because we're not using the number of workers. We can see a tractor able to do the work of many men quickly, much faster and more efficiently. Here, planting or doing something in the process of growing crops much faster than the people can do it. And so the people missing here obviously need to do other things in the economy. So the machinery, the equipment, the technology has taken over, increasing productivity, but the people in a modern economy need to be able to develop their brain power, their intellectual capacity, and add value in other ways. Obviously, this man here is adding a lot of value using the equipment. We don't need lots of people. And so the people taken out of this situation need to work in other ways. That's the point. In another situation, we can see in the past we had secretaries supporting maybe a sales representative. They would be filing all the records of the sales representative, processing the information maybe with a calculator by hand, writing letters, sending them off. Maybe they'd get a call from the sales rep to find out some information, they'd go to the cupboard, etc. If we go to this situation, we can see an office is here in this computer. and you've got the sales rep able to be connected and able to take files, process information, put files in like that without the need for space and people. We can see the productivity here is increased enormously, but we've lost the jobs of the secretaries because this person is able to add so much more value herself. And obviously, like I said before, the secretaries in this situation would need to find other ways to contribute. If we look in the past at our development and our progress in the economy, as we've increased our economy, we've lost old traditional jobs. Think about the process of agriculture to industry. You know, when we developed in the Industrial Revolution machines to do lots of jobs, we lost a lot of jobs. But we see that as part of the path of progress, and we wouldn't enjoy the lifestyles we have today if we hadn't done that. So it is painful, this change. The change is painful. But the ultimate goal is for a better life for everyone. Now, productivity can be measured in two ways. You've got labour productivity, where the average product of labour is the total output divided by the number of employees. And that will give us how much each worker has produced. And then we can compare yearly or monthly that number. Or you've got the average revenue product of a labour. So the revenue, the total revenue, is divided by the number of employees, giving us how much each employee has produced in terms of revenue. And that's a productivity that can be compared between countries, between times, even within a factory, etc. So those are the two methods. But there are problems with measuring productivity. We can measure productivity thinking we're doing fantastic. Now people are producing so much more than last year, when in actual fact the quality has gone down. If we focus just on number of cars each person produces, then maybe they produce them quickly, but we've got to remember every screw must be correctly and carefully put into the car for it to be quality and for it to work well, for many years. So it doesn't really show us, the measurement of productivity doesn't really show us the quality, and that can be a problem. We might be high in our productivity, but then the quality may be compromised. But also there's a problems of measurement for some areas. For example, schools, very difficult to compare productivity of teachers because we don't really see it in terms of revenue. The value a teacher produces and puts into the students is seen maybe over decades and decades later and in different ways, not in terms just of what they can do, but also how civilized they behave, etc. Lots of different roles that a teacher has other than just producing workers. So productivity of a teacher, very difficult to measure. In the past, we've had big jumps in productivity, and one big jump in productivity was for the division of labour. When they introduced this new method to work, they found productivity increased massively. This is when each worker specialises on a small part of the production process. So here we can see a production line, and each worker is doing maybe a repetitive movement over and over again. And this adds, each work adds part of the process until you get the finished product. And in this division of labour, we see massive increases in production. We think about the Ford car, the first T-model Ford car. If it's put together by hand, by one or two workers, it would take a long time. They would have to go and get each part, remember where each part is, how to put each part on, get different tools. It would take a long time. But by breaking that process to small parts, each worker can do a very repetitive movement and doesn't have to go and think, etc. So it really increased productivity. We saw more goods and services can be produced. Here we can see cooking done by division of labour. And in that way, they can do it much quicker. This means we can make use, so we're looking at the advantages. We've got more goods and services. We can make full use of each employee's characteristics. Maybe some have big hands or small hands and can do maybe things better than others. So maybe putting a top of a jar of marmalade or something, maybe if you haven't got the big hands, it would take you more time. Or maybe some are stronger and you need to put a wheel on a car, we need someone with the strength. So we can take advantage of all the different characteristics of each employee. And time is saved. We don't have to go from part to part and remember where everything is and find a different tool, etc. We're just doing one thing, which will save a lot of time. It allows the use of machinery. Remember, machinery can do each part very quickly. They're very good at repetition. One robot building a car would be difficult, but lots of different tasks done repetitively on a production line, we can suddenly give us the option of using robots and machinery. So that's an advantage. Disadvantages is the work becomes very boring. If you do something all day, every day, you will get very bored. That is a big disadvantage, very demotivating for workers. No worker cares if they've put a leg on a table a million times. If they've made a table, maybe that would give them satisfaction, but changes things. Workers feel very alienated from what they're doing. That means if you paint a picture or if you create something, it's satisfying because you've put something of yourself in there. But if you do a movement repetitively, this doesn't give you any satisfaction, any feeling of accomplishment, of doing something constructive, of pride. So workers feel very alienated from what they're doing and from the objectives of what they're doing. Difficult to motivate someone saying you're putting a screw in a car and you can see the car at the end of it. It wouldn't motivate anyone. Products become very standardized. Each product becomes the same. This means we can't have personalization for each customer, for each person that wants the product. They can't have exactly what they want. They have to accept what is produced. Right. There are other ways of increasing productivity, not just division of labour, and we'll talk about those in the lesson. You've got training of workers. This can have a big effect. Performance-related pay. If you say to workers, if the productivity goes up, your pay goes up, that will help motivate everybody to to all pull together and try to increase productivity and work harder. Employees owning shares. You know, you've got Chrysler in America. Many of the workers have shares in the company. So they see the movement of their share prices going up. If the company does well, that will really motivate them and productivity may be affected. Increasing job satisfaction in some way, making the environment a bit better, maybe a bit more social, etc. Trying to keep people happier will have an effect. Replacing old machines with new ones and more efficient ones. This is a continual process. Every year, you know, companies, factories need to look at their machinery and what their competitors use and question whether they need to change to better machines, because technology always goes forwards. And then better production processes, maybe changing the production line, where you put the stock of parts, where people stand, etc., what people do, things like this. So there are other ways. We'll look at those a bit more. Okay, so production. We need to talk about types of production. Economists have put two categories. You've got labour-intensive organisation and capital-intensive organisation. Labour-intensive organisations are where workers are dominant, are the resource used by the organisation. So you have a lot of people involved in the process of production. And then you've got capital-intensive, where a lot of capital, machine, robots are being used in the production process. Obviously, we've got this development over time, for a long time, where everything is becoming more capitally intensive. Now, is this a good thing? Again, we need this to enjoy the lifestyles we have, to have 35 years of pension and 25 years of schooling and weekends and holidays, etc. And all the wealth we were able to buy with, or products and those we're able to buy with our wages and our incomes. We need this process of capital-intensive organisation, which means people's roles in the economy are changing and will change. And that also should be a good thing in the end. If we get there, we find the repetitive, boring work should be replaced with something a bit more creative, and the repetitive work should be done using capital-intensive methods. So this is an important development that's happened for a long time and will keep happening. Movement. We call it factor substitution, when people are being replaced by robots or machines. That's factor substitution. And again, that's because robots and machines can add so much more value and productivity goes up.